All right, enough of that. Dang, I don't even have my bots in the chat. That's where you know it's scary, man. As a creator, man, you don't have bots in the chat. It's when things get squirrely. Time to crack my Miller. Beverage of champions. We're not sponsored by anybody, but especially not by Miller Lights. Let's just get into it. Deshaun Watson. Okay, 6-game suspension. I think it was announced early this morning. I woke up to a notification. Deshaun Watson, 6-game suspension. Okay, and you can see my bullet points. I wanted to lay it out in text in case anybody, in my chat was hard of hearing. They could at least read the gist of it. There was 25 total cases brought against Deshaun Watson for sexual misconduct. I believe, now I could be wrong, but from what I have read and from what I have seen, this man was getting massages. Okay, so you can't blame him. He's probably sore. He probably has some real tight psoas muscles, some real tight gluteus maximus, minimus, gluteus total, all the glutes. But apparently he was kind of, I don't want to say forcing himself, but I think a valid comparison would be like a Louis C.K. situation where all of a sudden, like, the towel is off and Deshaun Watson his hog is just saying hello, Me llamo Deshaun's hog. And I don't think a lot of ladies appreciated it. And I think it was universally recognized as kind of a problem. But apparently it happened quite a bit. It happened quite a bit. There was this graph that showed there was 15 touchdown passes in his last season. I don't know if that was 2019 or whatever it was. I would have to look. And in that same time period, there was 66 different women that he had hired, or the organization had facilitated 66 different massage therapists, all females, which can't necessarily blame them, okay? Can't blame them there. But 66 different females that he got massages from. And my thing is, if I'm getting massages, right? If I'm a pro athlete, I'm going to stick with a massage therapist that I'm comfortable with, number one. Number two, can really, have some forearm strength, got the crab claw, and can really get in the deep tissue, but someone that can do the job. I can't imagine 66 different times trying to find a new female to do my massages. And that's where I think it kind of gets a little weird. He claims he's completely innocent on this whole thing. I don't know about that. I do know 66 different women. Maybe it was a game of numbers. NFL players are all about statistics. They're all about filling the stat sheet. It's probably a game of numbers, and he maybe he enjoys a happy ending. Regardless, it has got him into some trouble. Okay, so there was 25 total cases that were brought against him. Of the 25, 24 stuck. I think one of them was, I don't want to say fraudulent, but I think it was dismissed immediately because they wouldn't provide a name for they wanted to be anonymous or something, which isn't how this works. So I believe there was 24 legitimate cases brought forward. Estimated so far, $33 to $55 million in settlements. And I think originally he had offered $100,000 to each woman, each party that came forward regarding this issue. But I mean, that would have only been like $2 million in settlement. So I think it was like more like $1.5 to $2 million each settlement so far. And all that stuff is, excuse me, all of the actual numbers is obviously confidential. So we don't know the extent and the actual specifics on how much has been paid out so far. But as of today, 23 out of the 24 cases are settled. And of those 23 cases that are settled, they are estimating $33 to $55 million in settlements. And was it worth it, Deshaun? Was a little massage therapy? I mean, geez, $55 million. I'm sure you could have got a consensual party, man. I mean, geez, man. He lost $345,000 in game checks. So essentially, out of the 6 games that he's suspended for, he is going to lose $345,000 of income off those 6 games, which is kind of an afterthought considering his new contract, which we will talk about later. My question that I want to pose to you guys is, does the punishment fit the crime? 6-game suspension, $33 to $55 million in settlements thus far. Who knows what's going to happen with the 24th case? $345,000 in game checks for the 2022 season for those 6 games. That's going to be the question throughout this whole stream. Is it just? Is it about right? Did they undersell the suspension? Should it have been more games? This is something we're going to talk about here. Okay, we're going to talk about it. But needless to say, this man is under fire. Okay, he is in the flames right now in the media, and I'm sure the SJWs are going to come for him. And when the SJWs come for him, Roger Goodell's going to just roll right over, because that man is I don't think he's had an original thought since maybe he asked for Rocky Road ice cream in the 2nd grade ice cream truck line. Okay, so that's needless to say. And we're going to talk about it, but if we're going to look at if his punishment fit the crime, we got to look at precedents. Okay, we got to look at what cases in the NFL thus far are kind of similar, and how did the NFL deem those cases? Because when you get into legal frames and legal battles, it's all about precedents. It's what's happened before dictates what happens now. Okay, so prior cases that are similar to Deshaun Watson's. And I think the important thing to realize here is that this is without criminal charges. So far in the history of the NFL, there has only been 2 cases of sexual misconduct that did not involve criminal charges. So we're not talking about, Kareem Hunt, which I don't even know if that's considered a sexual misconduct. I think that was just domestic violence. But I mean, even Greg Hardy, right? Greg Hardy, there was some serious domestic violence there. And I don't think he even had a 6-game suspension. I think it was like 3 games or something crazy. But so far, there's only been 2. And the 2 cases that we can see are Jameis Winston with a 3-game suspension in the 2018 season for allegedly groping an Uber driver without her consent, which is fascinating, man. I'd be interested to know how that went down. He's in an Uber. Maybe he's going out. He had pregame pretty heavily. He's kind of drunk, and he's in the front seat. I'd have to imagine he's in the front seat for that. Just logistically, I mean, he would have to work real hard to grope from the back seat, and it'd actually be a lot more scary, in my opinion, if that was the case. Maybe grab the thigh, maybe even went for a little titty bump, for the Uber driver. And that's pretty, I mean, as an Uber driver, I don't blame them. That's a payday for them. Are you kidding me? You get Jameis Winston a little too sauced, and he decides to grab your thigh or something like that. I mean, shit. But he got a 3-game suspension, which I would honestly say is a pretty fair ruling on that. It's hard to say because we don't know the extent of the groping, and a lot of what happens when this stuff goes to settlements and it goes into like the whole legal thing. You don't necessarily get the details that we all want to know. You kind of just get the clickbait headlines. So we don't know a lot of like what these players actually did, which brings me to my next point. Big Ben, 6-game suspension in 2010 for allegedly sexually assaulting a 20-year-old girl in the bathroom of a nightclub. And I think that case particularly is universally like regarded as like it happened, like I think that's one of those things where people look at it and they're like, yeah, Ben probably did something real shady in that bathroom. The criminal charges were brought forward initially, but they were dropped. So who knows what happened there, why they were dropped. So there was no actual criminal charges brought forth against Big Ben for that alleged sexual assault. And by the way, you got to preface all of these things with allegedly, because even if they settle, even if they do this or that, there's not an actual legal verdict that says they did it or they didn't. Just millions of dollars that float away into these victims' bank accounts. So Big Ben got a 6-game suspension in 2010. Fat payday. Yeah, no, I agree. It is a fat payday. He got a 6-game suspension for like probably a little bit more gnarly stuff than what we're seeing with Deshaun Watson. I think Deshaun Watson was like I mentioned earlier, but like a Louis C.K. sort of thing. He kind of like pulled his dick out underneath the massage towel and, hey, I'm Deshaun Watson. You should want this. And they're like, dude, I'm married. I've got 2 kids. One of them has a recital after this. You think I want to be thinking about this, what I'm looking at right now at my child's piano recital? Probably not. Probably not. So far, the president's basically what it means is that the NFL is viewing this in a similar fashion to Big Ben's ruling of a 6-game suspension in 2010. Granted, that was 2010, before Me Too, before just the overall general progression of, I guess you could say, awareness of this sort of thing, of sexual misconduct, not only in professional sports, but we saw the whole Weinstein thing. We saw the whole Epstein's Island thing. So I think now if like this was reversed and Ben Roethlisberger was being tried, I think he gets an indefinite suspension the way things are going now. But that being said, I would say it's more similar. The Deshaun Watson case is more similar to the Jameis Winston case because it's kind of not quite. I mean, look, at the end of the day, you can't call it rape. You can't call flinging the massage towel off and you're naked and you're saying what's good. You can't call that rape because at the end of the day, there's real rape out there. There's real serious sexual violence out there, which is not to say that groping is not extreme, that you shouldn't do it. Obviously, you shouldn't do that, but you can't put them in the same playing field. So I would say they're kind of similar, Jameis Winston's situation. The only obvious thing that is different is the fact that there was 24 women that came forward, and that was just to personally bring a case against Deshaun Watson. There was actually 30 women that brought cases against the Houston Texans organization as a whole regarding their enabling of Deshaun Watson doing these things to team massage therapists, to people that were technically probably employed by the Houston Texans. And so there was actually more cases brought up against the Houston Texans as an organization with 30 cases. By the way, all of those settled. And I don't have a numerical figure for those settlements, but I can probably say they were pretty high. The Texans wanted that to go away as soon as possible. But I would say the difference in the fact that it was a repeat offender, it seems to be a habit for Deshaun Watson. I think that is the reason why it was a 6-game instead of maybe something like a 3-game. Essentially, Papa Drizzy, where we're at right now in the stream, we're just looking at the precedents in the NFL for sexual misconduct. And the most... Hey, relax, Moose. Relax. See, Moose he's very much against sexual misconduct. Damn. Maybe I need a massage therapist. I should hit up Deshaun. And at what cost? Right? So $33 to $55 million estimated. Confidential numbers in those settlements, so we don't know. But 23 out of the 24 have settled. Estimated 33 to 55 million. Pretty crazy. 345,000 in game checks. Still one remaining unsettled case, and I am very curious. With the unsettled case, because now that he got that contract, now that he got that payday with the Browns, if I'm the lawyer, okay, which I'm not, I am not a lawyer, but if I was, and if I was the lawyer of the woman who is the last Mohican, the last person to settle, I'm up in that settlement amount. So let's say if there's an estimated 33 to 55 million, that means he's paid out, give or take, $1.5 million to $2.5 million to each case so far, to kind of just smooth things over. I'm bumping that up to double, at least $5 million, right? Weed and gambling is more fucked up than sexually assaulting 25. Right? Dude, that's okay. So Papa Drizzy. So if Josh Gordon gets basically a lifetime ban for substance abuse, right? And he did test positive for PEDs at one point, and he was a repeat offender, so you got to take those things into account. But if the final straw was weed, and you're going to tell him he can't play football, and this is coming from a dude like Roger Goodell, I want to see a shirtless picture of Roger Goodell. I want to see a shirtless picture of Mr. Josh Gordon, and I want to say, who should be telling who about physical health? Probably Josh Gordon should be the expert on that. That dude is built like an absolute freight train. Okay, he obviously takes care of himself. He obviously is a super athlete. The fact that you're going to sit there and tell him he can't smoke weed and be banned from the NFL indefinitely, and yet, Deshaun Watson's over here getting a rub and tug from who knows, maybe 66 different massage therapists. Pretty crazy stuff, man. Pretty crazy stuff. And frankly, if you look at a guy like Colin Kaepernick, who is theoretically blackballed by the NFL for his whole kneeling during the anthem and his outlook on police brutality, if my honest opinion on that whole thing is, I think this whole predicament with Deshaun Watson, I think it proves that it wasn't necessarily the league blackballing Colin Kaepernick. I think it was the league saying, what are the pros and cons? Because at the end of the day, this is a business. It's a business. They bring in money. They have to pay these athletes these crazy contracts. These executives are thinking about the dollar sign. And a lot of times being socially aware like co-aligns with the dollar sign, and then all of a sudden they're the Good Samaritan, they're the social justice warrior when it aligns with the dollar sign. The thing is with Colin Kaepernick is that it didn't align with the dollar sign, and I think it shows that maybe he wasn't talented enough. He didn't have the same talent as Deshaun Watson, and I think that means, that's the reason why he's not getting signed. I mean, the NFL is a joke. Look at how long the MLB gave Trevor Bauer. That's a proper time for the crime, and I am a Dodgers fan. But listen, and this is something that I probably should have reiterated earlier or stated earlier. There's not a lot of evidence, like hard evidence, against Deshaun Watson. It's almost exclusively anecdotal. Granted, where there's smoke, there is fire, in my opinion. So I think if 24 women, actually 30 women total, come forward and say that there was some problems, there was definitely some problems. So I'm not saying there weren't problems. I'm just saying there was no evidence to give the same sort of sentence that they gave Trevor Bauer. Because with Trevor Bauer, I mean, they had text messages. They had some pretty gnarly stuff with Trevor Bauer, and I didn't really follow that case like super in depth, so I could be wrong. But I think the evidence that they had against Trevor Bauer was a lot more substantial than the evidence they had against Deshaun Watson. And Trevor Bauer's no scrub. If we're talking about dollar signs, I mean, he's a valuable asset to a MLB baseball club. It's not like two women though versus 30. No, I mean, I agree. And if they had text messages from all these women and Deshaun Watson responding to them saying things like, hey, I'm going to be there next week, towel off, full nudity, we ain't at the nude beach, but we going to make it happen. Then the NFL takes a complete different view on it. If you're a piece of shit towards women, then you're a piece of shit towards women. Yes, 100%. And I think that Deshaun Watson probably has a huge ego. He's probably a dick. He's probably an asshole. But when we start talking about legal proceedings, and we start talking about determining fines and suspensions and actual criminal charges, you have to look at evidence. There's a lot of women out there that say that Johnny Depp is an asshole towards women and that he shouldn't have won that case. And it might be true, but the fact of the matter is the evidence weighed in his favor, for better or for worse, and that's what happened. So you can't just base things off like, him being an asshole, which is true. Nowadays, you're not getting away with anything. Doesn't matter if it's a rub and tug in the team training room or if you are trying to have some freaky sex with the receptionist at SoFi Stadium. It's like there is no hiding nowadays, because it's going to come out. Is this a proper sentence for what Deshaun Watson did? Does it make sense? And I'll be the first one to say Watson won. Watson and his legal team, Watson and his bank account won. And that's saying something because he paid upwards, 33 million is the low estimate in settlements, maybe 55 million. We don't know, it's confidential. But Watson won. And it's one of the few cases where a NFL player, this is like OJ level. Okay, please scratch that from the record. I am not going to compare this to OJ Simpson. But what I'm trying to say is that OJ won. OJ won despite evidence, which, granted, there's not a lot of evidence for Deshaun, but Deshaun wins, man. And you know why Deshaun wins? Is because usually in cases like this, it's not the fines, it's not the suspension, it's not even the settlement money that causes a player to tank. Okay, because that could all be made over the next few seasons. This situation, the reason why Deshaun Watson wins is because the Browns, despite the controversy, despite the craziness, decide to fire sale Baker Mayfield, who was, he was doing commercials for Allstate, but it turns out he was not in good hands. He got shipped off, and they decided to bet everything on Deshaun Watson. Cleveland Browns signed him to a 5-year, $230 million contract. And you know what is kind of interesting to me? The $44 million signing bonus. You know what I'm saying? That is the interesting part about that whole thing. They gave him $44 million signing bonus. That's almost, and if we go back to my first slide here, estimated $33 to $55 million in settlements. What number is right in the middle of 33 to 55? I don't know. Let's take another look. 44 million in a signing bonus? Maybe. And I'm just saying maybe. I don't know this, but I'm making an educated guess. Deshaun says, hey guys, I like the weapons, man. I like Nick Chubb. I like Njoku. We've been out at a couple bars. I think he's pretty cool. I just got a cash problem right now because I'm having to hand out these settlements to 24 different women who have accused me of sexual misconduct. And I'm going to need $44 million right now. Right now. Just give me $44 million so I can get the settlements over with, and then go ahead and pay me another, $40 million a year, probably more like $44 million a year for 5 years, guaranteed. Okay, guaranteed. And we got ourselves a deal. And he's going from Houston to Cleveland. So it's not like he's going from the promised land, to Babylon. Okay, it's tough because I do believe sex work should be legal. Well, consensual sex work, look, there's a case to be made. And I think if any of this was consensual, I don't think we would be having this show. I think Watson would probably still be on the Texans if any of that was consensual, but I don't think it was. But man, 5 years, $233 million contract. Watson won, and he got a 6-game suspension, but he still has the $44 million cash that he can just divvy out to silence these people. And at the end of the day, he's walking away with a 5-year max contract for the Cleveland Browns, where theoretically he can lead them to a Super Bowl. I think it's interesting that he's still completely pleading innocent to all of this. And I think, honestly, that goes to show that he's probably not a great guy. At the end of the day, you could say something like, I made a mistake. I read the vibes wrong. I thought it was consensual, but it wasn't. And I apologize. There's no excuse, blah, 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 blah. He didn't even do that. He's still claiming that he's completely innocent. And it doesn't matter for the Cleveland Browns. They're giving him the sort of contract that a lot of quarterbacks, most quarterbacks in the league would be like, yo, I'm out here grinding in the film room. Deshaun Watson's getting the rub and tug in the back, unconsensual, and he's getting that kind of contract. Crazy. And I think it goes to show that the Cleveland Browns are getting a little desperate. They've been on the fringe of being a contender for a minute. And in my opinion, the missing piece has been Baker Mayfield. If he produced half of what they thought he was going to produce, they would be a playoff contender. And with the 6-game suspension, even with the potential $55 million in settlements over 23 different cases, 1 left to go, 24 total cases. When you're getting a contract like he did, $345,000 in game checks, that's like me going to Carl's Jr. and getting a double bacon Western and a Famous Star. Okay, for me, that's upwards $20. We're looking at a $22 receipt. It hurts, right? But the way I look at that $22 receipt for those burgers, is the same way Deshaun Watson looks at $345,000 in game checks for the 6 games he's going to miss out on. So does the punishment fit the crime? If we look at the precedents, I would say in today's climate, no. No, I was expecting at least an 8-game suspension. And really, I mean, and that's at least an 8-game suspension. I wouldn't have been surprised if they suspended him for the whole season. You look at the NFL's justice system, and it just doesn't make any sense. It really does not make any sense. If I'm Josh Gordon, I'm livid. If I'm Calvin Ridley, I'm livid. I don't know if there's any sort of appeal process for this sort of thing, which I think there is. I think the NFL can appeal, and I believe they can push for more suspension. One interesting thing to note is that the NFL's Player Association, they were chill with the 6-game suspension. In fact, I was reading an article, I think they even thought it would be less. So it seems like the players, and granted, I feel like a lot of those players have some misconduct of one form or another. So they're probably backing them because they understand that the next case that comes around, it's all about precedents. What did Jameis Winston get? What did Deshaun Watson get? Because that determines in the future what these guys get if they have punishments happen, or if they have allegations, if they have this or that. And I think what it means for the NFL, man, I think it means that they are setting a precedence of a little bit more relaxed punishments for these guys, because if you go from banning Josh Gordon for smoking a doobie on a Tuesday night, and then you go where there's 24 women that comes forward, actually 30 women that come forward saying that Deshaun Watson did some funny business with them, and you're going to make it a less sort of crime. I mean, it's totally backwards in my opinion. It's totally backwards. But that's the world we're living in. And I'm kind of curious to see how Deshaun does in the back half of the season. I'm kind of curious to see this final case. It was 23 of 24 have been settled, right? So if we go here, 23 of 24 have settled. There's still one remaining unsettled case. I'm curious to see what happens with that case. I really am. I'm curious, because after I see that payday, if I'm the lawyer, man, I'm asking for more money. I'm asking for more money personally. I don't think $1.5 to $2.5 million is going to do it. After you see that payday, I would too, man. I would drag it out. I would be like, hey, Deshaun, I know you got some money now. I'll go ahead and let it linger for a second. I'll go ahead and see how much I can get out of this. I think it is pretty gnarly. I think it's gnarly. I think the NFL is setting a very, very interesting precedence on sexual misconduct, and I think that they're going to appeal, I would say, because they're trying to have good optics, and the Browns have already gave them the contract. So if anybody loses out on anything, it's probably the Browns. It's probably the Browns on this. Anyways, you guys, on a more, I guess, fun note, Vegas. I am excited for Las Vegas, and it's happening soon. It is happening soon. We got our accommodations booked today. We got our flights booked last week. We are going to be doing our fantasy football draft live in Las Vegas, Nevada. We got a suite over there at the Venetian. We're cramming it in, man. We're going to have, 7 people in there and a few others in another room. It's going to be pretty crazy. I am going to bring my camera, try to document some of that stuff. But I'm excited for it, and I appreciate y'all tuning in for the stream. As always, buenos noches, buenos suertes, and adios.